then wrinkles start appearing, which I think for women, all of a sudden you look at yourself in the mirror and you see these visible changes happening. Put on your mask first, put on your life jacket first. It's because they understand that if you're not okay and if you are not taking care of yourself, you will not be capable or strong enough of taking care of or to take care of the other people. And people look at me going, okay, are you sure you want to leave your kid and husband home? It's important. The community spirit, we like talking, women especially, even supermoms are human. So learning to say no, which is something we are culturally not very good at. Again, we live in a culture where they say, why do you need to work? Why don't you stay home and take care of your children? And it helps you the best. You don't have to stick to one person if you don't want to stick to that person. So help is available. It's a matter of reaching out.
Welcome to another video at the 30 Plus YouTube channel. Today we are joined by Suhaila, who's a clinical psychologist, and we are going to talk about mental health here in Sri Lanka. Welcome, Suhaila. So I want to ask you, what are the common physical changes that a woman experiences after she crosses the age of 30?
When you cross the age of 30 is when the first signs of aging begin to show. So you would start seeing, so if you're looking at it from outside, you would start seeing gray hair. Again, it's genetic. You might maybe see it before, but it starts becoming more pronounced here. Then there is also the possibility of weight gain, because once from puberty to 30, there you actually gain a lot more muscle mass, but then once you cross 30, you start losing muscle and therefore start gaining fat, and you can start gaining more weight. It becomes tougher to move between weights as well, whereas before that it's easier to lose weight, put on weight, but now it becomes a lot more set. And bone density. There are issues with bone density. Bone density decreases, which makes you more prone to things like osteoporosis. What else? The physical changes, then the hormones, hormone fluctuations. I mean, speaking of your area of expertise, I suppose, hormone fluctuations, there could be a dramatic drop in estrogen, progesterone, which again speeds up aging, decreases heart health. There could be a possibility of something we call perimenopause, which is like a transition phase between before menopause. So there could be changes in periods, drastic increases, decreases, duration changes, and what are the other physical changes? I think, and then wrinkles start appearing, which I think for women, all of a sudden you look at yourself in the mirror and you see these visible changes happening. Other than that, those would be the most prominent physical changes that happen. And also in some cases, changes in fertility. So whereas, you can conceive after the age of 30, there's no problem. But however, once you cross that age, because of the hormonal changes in your thyroid function, conception can become a little harder, or you have greater risk of having complications, greater risk of miscarriages. And this drastically increases after the age of 35. So those would be the most common physical changes that women experience.
So would you be able to give us a bit of an insight as to the effect these changes in appearance have on mental health for these women?
In the past, research showed that there were higher rates of depression and anxiety in their 20s for women. But now research suggests that the risk is equally high, or similar, even in between the 30s and 40s as well, because of all of these changes we spoke about. And also because suddenly in your 30s, you are, in terms of career, you're probably in a very crucial point in your career, like climbing up that ladder. In terms of family, again, you're in a very crucial point, because questions about should I have children, or should I have more children, should I have another one at this point, and then concerns or the anxieties that come along with that. and then all of a sudden having to care for aging parents. That becomes something you need to deal with when you're in your 30s, as opposed to before that. So given all of that, we found that there are anxieties, depressive episodes or high rates of depression, stress, and then juggling all of this also results in a lot of depression and possibility of depression and anxiety.
So in your opinion, anxiety and depression would be the most common problems for 30 plus women, right?
Together with anxiety and depression, I think there are milder conditions which can be equally problematic, like burnout, because we initially spoke of the different things or different areas that women need to juggle at this point. Rising up the career ladder, juggling aging parents, questions of child rearing, caring. So with all of these together, the journey can be quite lonely, and with my experience, what I've noticed with a lot of women is that they tend to forget themselves and forget self-care. Even simple things like working out or carving out a little time during the day for themselves becomes quite a utopian thing for them. So all of that can result in just stress, burnout, which later sort of builds up and could lead to anxiety and depression. And another thing that I think it's important to mention here is postpartum depression. Although it's not specific to just the women in their 30s, it applies to any woman who's given birth. Postpartum depression should also be something that people watch out for. Generally, you can see symptoms of depression a few days after birth, and it generally should clear up. Postpartum blues, as we call it, should clear up in the next 2 weeks following birth. However, sometimes it doesn't clear up on its own, and it can drag on for a couple of months or even longer if untreated, and then it's called postpartum depression. So you would see all the typical signs of depression: the low mood or the mood fluctuations, difficulty eating, sleeping, or eating too much or sleeping too much. You would see the hopelessness, the worthlessness, the shame, the guilt, fears of maybe harming themselves or their child, which could affect bonding, which could affect everything in the relationship and in their family, in their home. So this is also something we sort of need to keep in mind, because a lot of women are choosing to have children a little later, which means their support systems also could be rather weak. Whereas back in the day, we had parents available to take care of our kids, but now our parents are also aging. So you are left to your own devices, or you need to trust a daycare center or another outside child carer. So all of these stresses could be on your mind.
So are there any good habits that you recommend to maintain a good mental health for women?
Lots. Where do I start? First of all, carving out some time for yourself. It's really easy to forget that you are important. So what I always tell women I work with is fill your own cup first. It's the same theory that they follow in the flights, where the flight attendant talks about taking care of yourself in case there's a crisis. Put on your mask first, put on your life jacket first. It's because they understand that if you're not okay and if you are not taking care of yourself, you will not be capable or strong enough of taking care of or to take care of the other people, including your children. So we might, society generally says, oh, that's very selfish, you need to put your children first or your family first. But you can do that, but it will catch up. In time, you are going to start feeling the effects of it, and then you are going to crumble, at which point you're not going to be able to do that anymore. So it's really important to first put yourself first, carve out, fill your own cup, like I said, and carve out some time. Maybe wake up earlier than everybody else in the morning, provided you can sleep early in the night, but maybe waking up a little earlier, following a good exercise routine. It doesn't have to be long drawn out, but something simple, something small that you can do for yourself, because we discussed about how bone density goes down in your 30s. you'll start losing muscle mass and gaining fat instead. So working out and doing strength training, walking, running can maintain bone density as well as maintain a healthy body like fat to ratio. And then also diet is really important. Eating more fruits and vegetables, your supplements, like making sure you have enough vitamin D, calcium, iron, which again women neglect. We take it when we are pregnant, but then once the baby is born, we forget about it because we know, iron is important for your baby's well-being, so you take it religiously, but then after that you forget. So, but it's important to continue those things because that would maintain your bone health as well. Then hobbies, carving out time for your hobbies, which could be difficult, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom. It could be really difficult because you are putting all your time and energy into taking care of the home and children. You just don't feel like you have the time for anything else. But that me time, where you have a hobby for yourself, where you invest in that, you build that up, could help build your self-esteem and give you a sense of satisfaction. Because speaking about stay-at-home moms, parenting could be a very it's a thankless job to a certain extent. You're forgotten, your role is forgotten, everything else comes first. And unlike, say, if you have a career, you have goals you meet, you are rewarded for those, you go out, meet people who admire the things that you're doing. But when you're a stay-at-home mom, your only conversations are with the child most of the time, until your maybe spouse comes home from work. And it's never-ending lists of chores and constantly changing list of priorities and things that you're kind of doing over and over and over again. And you feel like, I've done this a million times today, but I'm still not done. Like you would clean the house and 5 seconds later it's dirty again. So it's really hard to gain any satisfaction out of that. If you could clean the house and it looks really good for the next couple of hours, it's really satisfying. But here within seconds, it's gone. So for stay-at-home moms, especially, it's really important to have a hobby, something of your own. Join a support group maybe, or like get together with other moms so that you have that adult time as well. Have a play session so that the kids are playing, you have other adults to talk to, or online support groups. Now, because of the country situation and all of that, online support groups are catching up, whereas it wasn't so prominent in Sri Lanka back in the day. So join an online support group. But it's really important, even grocery shopping, make it your time. Just go out by yourself. Take a holiday. I mean, I do that every year, and people look at me going, okay, are you sure you want to leave your kid and husband home? It's important. So it doesn't have to be a long thing, but maybe a day with your friends. It could go a long way in maintaining your mental well-being.
Very important, yeah. So you mentioned support group. What is the benefit of women joining a support group?
The community spirit. We like talking, women especially, and it's nice to have like-minded individuals just to share what you're going through. The chances are they would understand better because they're in similar places. And then also sharing tried and tested ways of dealing with something. And the community spirit also could serve as a reminder that not all problems need to be fixed. That it's okay. Some concerns are there and they're pretty constant. They keep coming up all the time, and there's no perfect way to address those. And you don't need to be perfect. Even supermoms are human. So having those support groups gives you that safe space to go and talk about these things, to not feel alone, and to share those experiences with others and share their experiences so that you feel like you're good enough. That you don't need to be perfect. So support groups are really helpful that way. And if we don't, to be honest, we don't have enough. So we really don't have enough here at the moment.
So talking of support groups, we actually have a support group on Facebook, this online support group. It's called the 30 Plus. And we also have a YouTube channel, which I'm sure is where you're watching this. So feel free to join, feel free to strike up a conversation. There's tons of women who would love to speak with you. There's tons of women who would like to meet, who would like to just sit down, maybe grab a cup of coffee and do all the things that you just talked about. So, talking of supermoms and talking of women who have so much going on, how do you balance motherhood and career?
Again, prioritizing and learning to say no, which is something we are culturally not very good at, but taking on only what you can. So even at work, learning to say no, taking on the responsibilities that are your responsibilities, but letting everything else go. And when you come home, learning to be present, being more mindful, so that when you're with your kids, you're with your kids. Because guilt is something a lot of working moms deal with because they feel like they're not giving enough time to their child or their family. But it doesn't have to be so, because whatever time you're giving with them, if it's quality time, so paint with them, draw with them, play with them, go out, make a mess, sit with them and have a meal, cook with them. There are little things that you can do, and children will also appreciate it because they know that when you're with them, you're completely there. So set phones aside, laptops aside, forget about your work problems. Easier said than done, but with practice you would get there. And taking maybe small little days out whenever you can. And also making sure that you do the best in terms of childcare, so that you don't let that guilt get to you as well. So tried and tested daycare centers, and again, what works for you. You may find that one of your friends swears by some other place. It doesn't matter what works for you and for your child. And I spoke about guilt. See, again, we live in a culture where they say, why do you need to work? Why don't you stay home and take care of your children? But maybe working is what helps you to be there, maintain that family that you need to. Maybe financially you have to work. Or it just gives you this deep sense of satisfaction, which is important. So it doesn't always have to be a case of sacrificing your family. It could be a balance. So finding that balance is what's really important as a mom who manages both home and career.
Are there any places here in Sri Lanka that you can recommend for mental health support and mental health services?
Yes, there are a few toll-free lines that you can reach out to as well, and completely anonymous. So there is Sumitrayo, the CCC line. Maybe you could share the numbers later. The CCC line, then there is Shanti Margam. So all these three, and also NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health, also has a phone number that you can call, and you will be given completely anonymous, free support. And Sumitrayo also has a facility where you could walk in if you wanted to. Then there are other psychotherapists, counselors, psychologists who work in different capacities at hospitals, in their own private practices. So there's a child, adolescent and family services, that's where I practice. We work on a sliding scale as well, so it's not completely free, but for people who we think need that support and cannot afford it, we do consider waiving that fee off. So like us, there are so many other organizations also that provide supportive services. And we've also seen in the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen a lot of online counseling services also emerging. So there's COPE, again, a part of child, adolescent and family services, and a few others that I've seen coming up. So reach out. Again, finding someone to talk to, it's like finding the right pair of shoes. You would try out so many and then you would find that correct fit. So feel free, to go and talk to different people until you find a person you can work with and you feel understands and helps you the best. You don't have to stick to one person if you don't want to stick to that person. So help is available. It's a matter of reaching out.
So are there any other final comments you want to make about mental health in Sri Lanka and possibly the stigma that surrounds the mental health conversations in Sri Lanka?
yes, it can be hard reaching out and speaking to people, because Sri Lanka is a village, Colombo is a household. So it could be hard because the concerns about confidentiality, about your story going out there are real. Those concerns are very real. And then mental health concerns are also not seen in a very nice light as well. It's considered maybe a weakness, or maybe something you're doing for attention or on purpose. But that's not the case. It's not a weakness. It's not something you would do for attention or on purpose. And there is something you can do about it if you reach out early enough to the right people. So, but all these negative ideas are still quite rampant in our society, which keeps people from reaching out for support, which also is what sort of makes matters a lot worse in the long run, because you're too ashamed to reach out when you need that help. You'd rather suffer silently until you crack. And then when you crack, it's a lot worse, because by that time you've damaged so much more along the way, and you've learned a lot of unhealthy habits. So instead of one thing to address, you've got so many other things piled up. So stigma is very real, but then there are also people who understand. While it's present, the other side is also there. So there's always a silver lining, and so if you find the right channels and if you reach out to the right people, you will get your support, and it can be kept confidential, and there is safety in reaching out.
It's all about reaching out. Don't be afraid. There are people out there, like Sohaila said, it's all about the right fit, like the right shoe. So don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to go out there, because there is an answer to every condition. Thank you for joining us today on 30 Plus on this conversation about mental health. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tune in for further videos on more unique topics.